please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions, where clearly the champion this week has been the budget, where the finance minister has spoken about the agriculture, farmers, produce, yields, and the kind of allotment that he has done in sense of monies for the sector as well. Well, it was on the expected lines when the finance minister spoke about this, because the markets were readying themselves for it. The farmers have been quite distressed. Last all of year, we have seen farmers protesting because of the lower realizations on their produce. The prices were trading well below MSP, and the debts has been yet another thing that this sector has been looking at. Well, we will analyze the budget in a greater detail. Joining us on the show for that is Mr. Atul Chaturvedi, who is President, Solvent Extractor Association. He also is Head of Agri-Business in Adani. Atul, hi, thank you so much for joining us. What is your sense, first of all, what is your first reaction to that? Of course, we did see headlines come out of the budget in sense of agriculture, but what is the kind of impact that we are expecting and the realization really?
In fact, as far as the pronouncements go, they're absolutely spot on, because it doesn't make sense that we talk in terms of 7 to 8% GDP growth for the country and agriculture languishing at about 2%. So it's high time somebody really caught the bull by the horns. And this budget probably has done that. But the proof of the pudding is in eating it. Let's see what the execution is, because the key to the success of all these issues which have been raised is the execution. This time around in the budget, they talked a lot about MSP. I was just analyzing MSP. MSP as of today is available on 23 commodities plus sugar. So it doesn't make sense to have 23 commodities in MSP. A lot of those commodities nobody bothers. So probably it's high time the government evolved a system whereby they kept reviewing the necessity or otherwise of MSP on certain commodities. To my mind, commodities could also act as a disincentive. If a particular crop the government doesn't want or the country doesn't want, you could disincentivize it. The farmers need not be producing that.
Are you saying that the Essential Commodities Act itself perhaps needs some changing?
No, I'm not saying it needs changing. I'm saying that the Essential Commodities Act needs to be buried so deep in the ground that it doesn't resurface again. It's rather funny that we are still living in the socialist era of the 60s. Now the country is producing more than 275 million tons of grains and more than 300 million tons, that's the finance minister said yesterday. So why are we still having laws which empower the inspectors or the food inspectors to such an extent they can make life miserable for serious players?
So, you know, just coming back to the MSP part again, the price differential scheme or Bhavantar scheme as we call it, is that going to make a lot of difference then, or is it good on paper but impact-wise isn't really there?
No, first and foremost, if you identify certain crops which you are going to be focusing on, then to my mind, Bhavantar is the way forward, because that's the way it's done worldwide.
Sure.
Nobody goes around buying all the commodities. If the government were to buy all the 23 commodities on which MSP is applicable as of today, then possibly all the godowns in the country might get full. And our own record of good housekeeping as far as stocks go is not all that great. So possibly the way forward is not to keep procuring everything under the sun, but now with Aadhaar and with all those digital interventions, you can jolly well pay the difference to the farmers. So Bhavantar scheme has been implemented in Madhya Pradesh, and that can actually become the beacon for the country. The only thing is, whatever mistakes may have been done, they need to be corrected, and this time round when it is implemented, all those aberrations should be set right. So I think that's the way forward.
Sure. I want to come to the technology part of it, because ENAM, while it was launched in 2016, has a lot desiring for itself. We haven't seen it come the way it should have, the way it was put out. The other thing that the finance minister mentioned was that the futures and the options for commodity markets should be used properly for agriculture. So when we talk about technology, whether it's in sense of ENAM or futures and options, where do we stand and what is the way forward?
I don't want to comment on ENAM, but I certainly would like to comment on APMC. APMC has been a millstone round the neck of proper marketing of agri-produce. Why should we tell the farmer, you will necessarily have to bring your produce to the market yard and then from there it gets distributed? The days when the fear was that the traders would dupe the farmers, I think that's all gone, because the farmers are much more intelligent than the traders and we put together. So they cannot be duped. And why should we shackle them? They can jolly well sell to whomsoever they want. It doesn't make sense, because if you increase the supply chain, you're creating more inefficiencies in that. In fact, long years back, CII had actually done a study where they called it the 1-1-1 syndrome. One was the money which the farmer gets, and 4 is what the consumer pays. So which means the in between
efficiency
is the inefficiency of the supply chain. So why do we want to saddle all those things?
But you know, that's the other thing really, because every time the prices go higher, we see the government falling over itself to ensure that the prices are controlled. And on the other side, you want to increase farmers' income. How will you look at this contradiction go away or narrow?
No, this definitely is because we want higher income for the farmers and lower prices for the consumers. So this is a disconnect, but obviously this can be managed, and this can be managed through the Bhavantar scheme. But having said that, to my mind, what is more important is that the policymakers need to sit with the private sector, who are actually the domain experts. So that would help the government formulate better policies. And I'm very, very happy and enthused about one announcement which the finance minister made yesterday, was that institutionalizing the demand projections and prices. In fact, if you are able to do that properly, then these aberrations would not happen as they happened in the case of pulses, when the prices shot through the roof, and subsequently then they went the other way around and fell much below MSP. So all these things happened because our future projections weren't all that strong. And obviously people who are actually trading, if you can consult them and formalize that consultation, not necessarily in private, but formalize it, I think that should go a long way in helping take decisions timely.
As we move forward from here, very quickly, what is that one big opportunity and a challenge that you see in front of government until the next budget perhaps?
The government will have to possibly look at short-term and long-term measures.
Sure.
And the short-term measures can only be price-related. So it's important that you keep re-looking at your import duties in terms of edible oil, which we are much more close on. The government has been very, very proactive. In fact, if the government had not taken the price increases in the August and November, I'm sure they would have had a very tough time managing the groundnut and soya bean, because they were all selling 25–30% below MSP. So again, it boils down to taking timely action, and it was good that the government listened to the stakeholders, and we were given a solid hearing, and the action was also taken immediately. So this is something which needs to be institutionalized and formalized. So this will possibly help the government, which means we will have to relook at commodities on which duties need a relook, so that your dependence on imports come off. So that is a work in process.
So short-term, long-term, institutionalizing it, formalizing it, and of course moving in the right direction, which the government perhaps has started. Mr. Chaturvedi, thank you so much for joining us, analyzing and giving us your sense on what you think about the budget and the road forward. Well, we are now joined by Sudhakar Tomar, who's MD Hakan Agro. He's also associated with the Global Pulses Federation. Sudhakar, hi, thank you so much for joining us. You know that clearly the theme is about budget, and you work in India, within India, outside as well. What is the sense that you have taken here, especially belonging to an agriculture space?
First of all, thank you very much for having me. We are very happy with the continuation of government policies, which is agri and rural centric. We feel for a country with 68% of people depending on agriculture, this is a very welcome step, and especially so now with the 50% increase in over MSP. It will stop being from a suggestion price to a support price. So this is a very good thing, and this will send the right signal to the farmers to grow the produce which we need in India very much. And other than that, I feel in the long term also other schemes which have been introduced by the government in terms of be it Kisan Credit Card or the irrigation or health insurance.
So how are you rating it in sense of schemes?
Well, I feel
on a scale of 10 maybe.
On a scale for 10, if I were to comment on agri and rural development centric, I would do it definitely 7.5 to 8.
And implementation?
Implementation is always the key for any policy. I feel implementation wise, I think we have a very limited time now. Pretty much good 1 year. But I feel that the intent is very genuine. And the policies now, the right policy framework is in place, and there is no way for this. We all have to understand. We have to change also our psychology that there is no way but to remunerate the farmer more than what we really feel fit. We think. So I feel everything is being done in the right step.
So, you know, going forward from here for the next 1 year, which are the key points? Because there have been 10 or 15 areas which the government has talked about. Which are the top 3 priority that you think the government will have to, you know, work on as an urgent basis?
I think the first thing is to remunerate the farmer with the right value. Second point is to have the linkages, which is very important, that the farmer should have the right opportunity to sell his produce at the best possible price. And the third thing is digitalization, that we have to include the technology in all the aspects of the farming. These 3 things, if we can target in short term, I think that will be the winner.
You know, this government, or any other government for that matter, always gets jittery when you see the prices of a commodity rise up. That leads to inflation, and that has led to more than often banning or suspending of agriculture commodity trade in the derivative markets as well. This time the government was on a back foot because we saw the commodity prices declining. So how do you see the government balancing it out from the producers and the consumers?
I think for any country, not only for India, government has a very tough objective set out to have the right and affordable price to the consumers. At the same time, especially for a country where 7 out of 10 people are dependent on agriculture, to give them the right remuneration, only then they'll be encouraged to grow something to feed all 10 people. So this is it's a very tight balance which they need to walk. But we as consumers also have to realize that food, good food, non-toxic food is not going to be cheaper ever. So we have to have this mindset to spend a little bit more for the food. Once this mindset comes, I think that will be the winner.
Also, apart from that, how have you seen pulses? Because you are closely associated with that. The way we've seen all-time highs and then prices go 40% below MSP in a matter of 3 years, how do the producers really live with that kind of price volatility?
So as far as producers are concerned outside, India is a very big market for global producer of pulses. But at the same time, if you have noticed since 2016, when the International Year of Pulses was declared by United Nations with the support of Global Pulse Confederation, there are many versatile usage of pulses which have come out. So you'll be surprised that more than 6,000 brands are being launched on pulses outside India, which is the mother and the birthplace of all things pulses. So you will see innovative usage of lasagna, pasta, noodles, yellow pea flavored milk, pet foods. So some amazing diversity in the usage of pulses is happening now. So base is widening, but at the same time, India being the major market, it does send a bearish or bullish signal to the producing market depending on the market. So current year there is oversupply in India. There's also buffer stock. So the 2018 is going to be relatively quite a year.
So we are not going to look at higher commodity prices or higher pulses prices in this year as well as what you're saying.
2018 is going to be relatively calmer and more stable. Yeah.
Okay. While we talk about agriculture is a huge area, starting right from the producer to pre-harvesting, post-harvesting, inputs, warehousing. There's just so much happening there. But what are those three, again, that seems to be my favorite number today, what are the three key areas in the whole supply chain which needs to be really pushed right?
I think in order to give the right price to the producer, farmer that is, and to the consumer, the more efficient is the supply chain. There is no reason that we have to waste 1/3 in the supply chain in terms of food loss and wastage. Also in terms of linkages, there is no way why a consumer you cannot order your pulses directly on your app, directly linked to the farmer. And the third thing is we are not talking much about this subject, the increasing level of toxicity in food. That is very important, and that is something which we don't see now, but the long-term impacts in say 20-30 years time they're visible. So these three things are the key priority for any company who's in food supply chain. And
what crops are those which are crying for immediate attention right now? Because while of course we are import dependent for many of those, whatever we are producing in India also is not of the proper quality, or the yields are not proper, is something that the markets have been fighting for the longest time.
I think anything, talking in terms of specifically for India, anything where we import, we know the work is cut out. Those are the things we have to look at: oil seeds, pulses, wheat and sugar. Yeah, these are the key crops that we have to pay.
So when we talk about doubling farmers' income by 2022, of course there's a roadmap that has been put in by Niti Aayog. FM spoke about on how there is more work that needs to be done to pave the road forward. But how do you see India achieving that?
I think doubling the farmers' income is a very relevant and noble task. In fact, if you really talk, because I've been closely associated with the rural background, so maybe not double it. I would like this income to be 5 times, because the kind of income level at which the subsistence farming is happening in India is just appalling. So that has to improve. But of course, it's also a big challenge when we're talking about 700 million people depend on agriculture. But we have to take many steps, slowly but surely, and I think all the steps which are happening right now in terms of either Bhavantar or increasing MSP or government procurement for pulses, everything is happening in the right direction. It's just that if we can have a policy which is more long-term, so that all the components of supply chain, value chain can prepare themselves to participate, whether it be distribution, value addition, processing, that will have a long-term impact instead of having quick fixes for the policy.
So, you really seem to be coming out with very forward-looking, future-looking policy arrangements right now. When we talk about value addition at the farmers level, because that's yet another thing that has come in many papers, Niti Aayog papers to be very relevant, on how it shouldn't be seen just as an agri-product or a commodity. There should be something more to add. Do you think the farmers are equipped for that? Because here we seem to be fighting with the very basic debt in their concern, and then value addition, food processing, contract farming. Do you see that going much sooner than as we see it right now?
Right now, a very large population, especially agri population, is not equipped for this challenge. But if we have the right kind of infrastructure investment at the village level, at the rural level, which can be encouraged by giving various schemes, incentives, once that setup is available at the rural level, especially in those states which are not doing very well compared to other states, that will allow two things. First, it will reduce the food wastage and loss which happens in the supply chain, especially at the pre and post harvest level, and also whatever we lose in the supply chain. So yes, the good quality effective investment in infrastructure at the village level, it can be in a P2P kind of partnership between the government and the private sector. That is something which will be a good idea. And also we need to again look at our cooperative system. That's an amazing model, especially for a country like India, which has fragmented and asymmetric ownership of the land. If we can look at that model again, but this time manage it efficiently and also with the proper governance, I think that is going to be another winner for us scheme of things.
Point taken. One final question, and this one I really want to ask about, is the Farmer Producer Association. The FPOs really seem to be catching up. There are some which are doing great work, but there are some which are only on paper. So we understand that the farmer as a community is very fragmented. Do you see FPOs as a way going forward, because they can participate, they can be heard more easier?
Yes, as long as both the partners know what is expected of each other, it's a win-win situation, and they should be serving a relevant need, not just for the sake of association, but it should eventually serve a purpose. We are in economic sense, it should serve a purpose.
Well, of course, everything needs to serve a purpose. Thank you so much, Sudhakar, for joining us. And that is the view coming in from our experts, really, that we are making right noises in right direction. The intent is good, as I said earlier as well, but it really is about implementation, giving it much more than we stand right now. And the time is, of course, quite limited. And that is something that the government and, of course, all stakeholders will have to keep in mind. That's all the time that we have on Commodity Champions for you today. Thank you so much for watching.